Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining. So we are continuing with our discussion on the introduction of Bhagavad Gita as it is. And last time we covered how Arjuna accepted Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse 12 to 14, Arjuna actually reveals that the position of Krishna is Param Brahma, the supreme truth, the ultimate abode, the purest of the pure, is the absolute truth, and he gives various characteristics. And then at the end he says that I completely accept whatever you have told, and he is accepting, not only he is accepting, but this is also accepted by the previous acharyas. And Krishna also declares. So he says, the Arjuna tells that he completely accepts what Krishna is mentioning him in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Then after Arjuna's revelation, then Prabhupada discusses about how one should understand Bhagavad Gita. So it should be accepted in the spirit of devotion, and one should not think that Krishna is an ordinary personality, but one should accept that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. And on the basis of that, one must submit oneself to the message of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for us to get the real essence of Bhagavad Gita. So then the next discussion was about Brahma Jigyasa, that how we all are suffering in this material world. And then some of the people who are suffering this way, inquire about, why I am suffering. And then the questions, they start asking these questions, and that process of asking the question is called as Brahma Jigyasa. So the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra, he begins with this inquiry called as Brahma Jigyasa. And the Vedanta Sutra begins with Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Therefore one must inquire. Why therefore one must inquire? So the assumption is we got this human form of life, and in the human form of life we have been gifted with this intelligence. So with this intelligence, we can discriminate what is right, what is wrong, what is good for me, what is not good for me. So then we can ask, when we inquire submissively, then we get the answer, that what is the real purpose of my life. So that's the subject we discussed last time. The purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to deliver the mankind from this nescience, and then this is what we discussed. And then from today we'll discuss this purpose of Lord's descent, which we know to deliver the mankind. Lord Krishna's descent specifically to re-establish the real purpose of life when man forgets that purpose. So yesterday we discussed that when we originally, actually we all of us are in the spiritual world, and according to Bhagavad Gita we are in the spiritual world, and then we want to enjoy separate from Krishna. So in the spiritual world, actually all the living entities are enjoying with Krishna by serving him. But when we desire to serve ourselves rather than Krishna, then those living entities are sent into the material world. So when they come to the material world, then a layer of Maya is given, a layer of forgetfulness is given, so that the soul can disassociate itself from this material world, as from the spiritual world, and can enjoy. That's the reason that covering is given. So because of the covering, they forget their real purpose. even then, out of many, many human beings who awaken, there may be one who actually enters into the spirit of understanding the position. And for him, this Bhagavad Gita is spoken. So, for those people who are trying to inquire, out of that also, one has to be in the mood of accepting the word of Krishna. Unless we are in that mood, or unless we take the position that I don't know anything and I will accept the word, because this knowledge is beyond our perception. We cannot understand anything of the spiritual world unless somebody comes from there and tells us. But if you try to speculate, then the meaning, the purpose is lost. So that's the reason we have to accept it as it is. Actually, we are all swallowed by the tigress of nescience. But the Lord is very merciful upon the living entities, especially the human beings. To this end, he spoke the Bhagavad Gita, making his friend Arjuna his student. So, the Lord comes here from time to time, and the reason he comes is because the message is distorted, has been changed, the original purpose of the message gets changed somehow or other, and to re-establish the same message, the Lord comes. And then if he wants to give the message, then he uses some of his devotees to pass on the message to us. So here in this case, Lord uses Arjuna to pass this message. Understanding Arjuna's position, that is the next topic of discussion. So we should not consider that Arjuna is like us, or is a one among us. No, he is a very pure devotee, but he plays a role of forgetfulness. So he assumes our position. So the Lord actually covers him for time being, so that he forgets everything, and then he acts like us, and then the Lord gives message to him. So it's just like a drama enacted to give the message to us. So that's why Prabhupada is trying to clear our understanding about Arjuna. So being an associate of the Lord, Arjuna was above all ignorance. But Arjuna was put into ignorance on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to question Lord Krishna about the problems of life, so that Lord could explain them for the benefit of future generations of human beings and chalk out a plan of life. So Prabhupada many times says that the life is a preparation and death is examination. So the life is meant to be preparing ourselves with the understanding of this spiritual knowledge, and that is the only purpose of life. Rest all things are doesn't matter actually. So Krishna actually uses Arjuna to give this message for the future generation. Then men could act according and perfect the mission of human life. So this is the mission of human life, going back to Godhead. We originally come from the spiritual world into the material world, and now we want to go back to the spiritual world, which is Vaikuntha Loka or Goloka. So those are all spiritual planets. In the future classes, we will see those difference between Vaikuntha and Goloka and other realm in the Vaikuntha planets. So Krishna uses Arjuna and to give this message. So that is the purpose of Krishna's appearance. So that is discussed in this 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and we discussed that earlier in earlier classes. Next topic is the 5 truths of Bhagavad Gita. So this particular point is actually very dear to me, because this is where my inquiry began into Bhagavad Gita. So when we moved to Seattle in 1998, I attended a lot of Bhagavad Gita classes in the temple, but nothing was making sense. What Harivilas Prabhu was giving the class, there was always some disconnect, because it's not that he's not presenting properly, but my understandings were not clear. So that is the reason I couldn't understand what he is speaking or why he is speaking whatever he was speaking. So I asked also a lot of time question, and he tried to clarify, but nothing was, coming up that I could understand the whole thing. So one time we were going for Harinam Sankirtan and I was with Rantidev Prabhu, and in his car we were hearing the cassette. At that time the cassette system was there. So in one of the cassette, in one of the lecture, the speaker was His Grace Radha Gopinath Prabhu from Mumbai Chowpatty Temple. So he was giving a discourse on science of self-realization. So in the class he said that unless one understands these 5 subject matters of Bhagavad Gita, and then he named that. So what are the 5 subject matters? Ishwara, Jiva, Prakriti, Karma and Kala. So unless they understand this properly, each of the subject, and then how these things work together, then the things will not fall in place. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. So there are different pieces of jigsaw puzzle, and when we put them together, then only it makes sense what it is actually. So similarly, if we, in order to explain or understand this Bhagavad Gita, there are the 5 subject matters which is explained by Baldev Vidyabhushan. So on this left side I have a picture of Baldev Vidyabhushan. So Baldev Vidyabhushan is one of the Acharya in our disciplic succession, and Srila Prabhupada actually dedicates this Bhagavad Gita to Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan. So in his commentary to Gita Bhushan, to Bhagavad Gita, which is named as Gita Bhushan, he explains that unless one understands these 5 subject matters, in each of them in details, and all of them how they work together, then it is very difficult to understand the entire Bhagavad Gita. So that's why, that's the point, and that's the time actually it clicked to me, okay, this is the reason I'm not understanding. So then I heard those classes. Actually, I got all those cassette into my home, and then I converted into CD, and actually that is also uploaded in the drive, not drive actually, in the cloud. So I will share the link is like tinyurl.com/Shastri studies. In that there is a directory called as Discover Yourself, or SSR, Science of Self-Realization. So there you will find the lectures of His Grace Radha Gopinath Prabhu, and those are the copies which is actually converted from the cassette to a CD, and those lectures actually I heard, in fact I heard like 7 times. I heard the entire series of lectures, then I heard it again, then I heard it again, and the 3rd, 4th time it started making sense, right? And by like 6th or 7th time, then everything was making sense, why he was speaking whatever he was speaking. And then things started opening up. Okay, this is the reason Krishna is saying something. So or Prabhupada is saying something. So the point is that we might hear these sessions, whatever discussion we are having here, but we'll have to go back and revisit. Then it will make sense that whatever I am speaking here, why I am speaking, or whatever Krishna is presenting in Bhagavad Gita, why he is presenting like this. So we have to repeat the message in order to understand. That's the whole purpose. So now we'll go into these subjects, the 5 subjects of Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada here explains the subject of Bhagavad Gita entails the comprehensions of 5 basic truth. So these are the 5 things we need or we will understand from Bhagavad Gita. And actually there is nothing more than this. All knowledge is encompassed within these 5 things actually. There is nothing more than this. The first one which we already discussed, Ishwara, or who is God. The second one is Jiva, or who am I. And the third one is Prakriti, or material nature. What is this nature? What do we see around us? Where we live, this is all material nature, part of the material nature. And how does it act? And the fourth thing is the karma, how action and reaction, how this all works together. And then fifth is kala or time, how the time factor works. So these are the 5 subjects discussed in Bhagavad Gita. And these are the 5 truths. So first of all, the science of God is explained, and then the constitutional position of the living entity is the jiva. So the living entity or jiva is, or us, we are actually soul. When we are part and parcel of Krishna. Right? So in our conditioned state, means in our liberated state, we are the soul proper. And then we are called as living entities when we come to this material world. So the soul is given a covering, and that covering actually covers the consciousness of the soul, which is originally Satchidananda. So Krishna is Satchidananda, we are also Satchidananda, but our consciousness or our awareness of the Satchidananda feature is covered. So then that soul becomes a living entity. Next, Prabhupada says, there is Ishwara, which means the controller. So Ishwara technically means controller. We are also controller actually, to some extent. We control certain situation. But here controller, or here when we use the word Ishwara, means the supreme controller. Or you must have heard the word Parameshwara. Parameshwara is Param plus Ishwara, means Parameshwara. There is Ishwara, which means the controller, and there are jivas, the living entity, which are controlled. So there is one Parameshwara, and others can be subordinate Ishwaras. If the living entity says that he is not controlled, but that he is free, then he is insane. So normally we think we are not controlled. Everything, we are independent, but actually there is a controller, and we go into details of all those stuff, that how we are getting controlled and who is controlling. We'll understand as we read further Bhagavad Gita. In fact, then once we understand in details, we'll see that everything is actually controlled. There is, in fact, no control on our side. But that is a very high stage of realization. But in the beginning, we think that we are controlling things. If a living entity says that he is not controlled, but that he is free, then he is insane. Right? So normally that is the condition. Normally, we always think that we are in charge, we are in control. The living being is controlled in every respect, at least in his conditioned life. Right? So conditioned life means in order to, there are some conditions, like when you buy a product, there's a star over there, conditions apply. So similarly, conditioned life means there are conditions needed for our enjoyment or purpose of enjoyment. For example, if I want to enjoy something, then my senses has to be good, my health has to be good. The sense object which I want to enjoy has to be in a proper state. Like for example, if I want to see, then the light has to be there. If there is no light, if there is darkness, we can't see. Right? So there are different conditions needed for us to enjoy or go through certain experience. So in the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matter deals with the Ishwara, the supreme controller, the jivas, the controlled living entities. Third is Prakriti, material nature. Fourth is time, the duration of existence of the whole universe or the manifestation of the material nature. So these are the details actually we are going to study. What is this whole universe? What is this material existence? And all those kind of details in Prakriti. We will go into details of that. And karma, which is activity, are also discussed. The cosmic manifestation is full of different varieties, and we see different varieties around us. There are a lot of trees, a lot of different kinds of living entities, trees, animals, insects, and so many things which we see around us. All living entities are engaged in different activities. And all of them, they are doing different things. From Bhagavad Gita, we must learn what God is, what the living entities are, what Prakriti is, what the cosmic manifestation is, how it is controlled by time, and what the activities of the living entities are. So this is what we have to learn through Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada used the word Shastra Chakshusha, means you see the things through the lens of Shastra. In material education also we have the same experience. We have to learn through science. So for example, if you ask a child, they see the sun, they'll see a sun as a small disk. But is it a small disk? When we learn from science that it is like 14,000 times larger than the earth, or some numbers are there. When we learn that, then we see properly actually that it just appears to be a small disk, but it is not a small disk. It's much larger than our earth, or it's much larger than what we can conceptualize, right? But apparently when we look at it without having the knowledge, without having the science knowledge of sun, then we understand it differently. So similarly, whenever we are seeing things around us, if we have the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, then we see the same things in a different way. Our perception of the same thing actually changes. Out of these 5 basic subject matters in Bhagavad Gita, it is established that the Supreme Godhead, or Krishna, or Brahman, or the Supreme Controller, or Paramatma, you may use whatever name you like, is the greatest of all. So this is the first point in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna establishes his position. He reveals his actual position. Matah parataram na anyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. There is no truth superior to me. Then elsewhere he is saying, aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate. Actually he is saying that everything you see is manifested, it's actually coming from me. And then he is saying that iti matva bhajante mam, one who worships me in that way, who performs bhakti in that way, buddha bhava samandita, that person is actually intelligent. So this is just 2 verses I said, but then there are verses after verses, or Krishna has expressed in Bhagavad Gita about himself, in so many different places. So this is what the first subject we understand from studying Bhagavad Gita. The living beings are in quality like Supreme Controller. For instance, the Lord has control over the universal affairs of the material nature, as will be explained in the later chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So we are qualitatively same as Krishna. So Prabhupada gives the example that ocean and a drop of ocean. So if we take a drop of ocean water, it is salty. It's same as the ocean water itself, the qualitatively, right? But quantity wise, there is a huge difference. It cannot be compared, right? So similarly, we are like a drop of ocean water, and Krishna is like a ocean. We are Anu. The technical terms are, in Sanskrit, it's Anu, and Krishna is Vibhu. Anu means very small, minute particle, and Krishna is the supreme, is the whole, complete whole. So the next paragraph, Prabhupada talks about the difference between Ishwara and Prakriti. So the Prakriti, or the material nature, is something which we see around us, like the earth, the sky, and whatever you see around us, that's a material nature. So material nature is not independent. So that's what Krishna is saying. Material nature is not independent, means it's not independently working other than Krishna. It is working under Krishna. She is acting under the directions of the Supreme Lord. How do we know that? Because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, As Lord Krishna says, Maya adhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. This material nature is working under my direction. And working under my direction means it cannot work independently of Krishna. Meaning, the sun is moving in a certain position, the moon is moving, all these things are moving around us, around the earth. So, Krishna is saying that all this is happening by my will and my direction. They act exactly as I say. Okay? When we see wonderful things happening in the cosmic nature, we should know that behind this cosmic manifestation there is a controller. So in the science of self-realization, we give an example that, we take a child to a crosswalk, we have signals all over the roads. The child will see, the light turns from red to yellow, green to yellow to red, and again becomes green. So to a child, it feels that is all automatic. Whenever a car comes, the light turns to green. So how does it happen? Actually, there is a control. We don't see the controller. Somebody has already programmed it, and then according to that program, it works. Or a remote controlled car. Sometimes we see remote controlled car. They're working on their own. It appears to a child that the car is running on their own. But is it running on its own? No, it's already designed to work like that. So similarly, things going on in this material world appears that there is no controller, but actually there is a controller who has programmed it to work like that. So that's what Prabhupada is saying. When we see wonderful things happening in the cosmic nature, we should know that behind this cosmic manifestation there is a controller. Nothing could be manifested without being controlled. It is childish not to consider the controller. For instance, a child may think that an automobile is quite wonderful to be able to run without horse. Now, the without horse means this was a long time back because purport was written. At that time, horse cart and all those things were there. Or other animal pulling it. But a sane man knows that the nature of the automobile engineering, this is the nature of the automobile's engineering arrangement. So some engineer have designed this car, and now this car is working exactly according to the design. Okay? Like now, the automated car comes, they work, you don't have to touch the steering wheel. The car runs on its own. It identifies things in front of it and it automatically brakes, or it can identify a signal and it can stop. So is it automatic? No. There are hundreds and thousands of people who have worked on the software of that car, like Tesla, they worked on software of that car, and now the car is work exactly as designed by those engineers. So there is a control. He always knows that behind the machinery there is a man, a driver. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is a driver under whose direction everything is working. So this is a nice picture of Krishna, who is a Ishwara, and the whole world, actually material world, is working under his direction. So with this we will stop and then we'll continue further from this point onwards in the next session. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol.